Welcome to Monk's Silence, a place where Zen stories are told in stillness. Here, you don't need to understand, just breathe and listen. Each night is a journey inward, a quiet return to yourself, where ancient wisdom meets present peace. These timeless teachings will gently touch your heart like a breeze over calm water, soft yet deep. Allow your mind to rest and let the silence begin to whisper within you. Tonight, you will listen to the jewels of ancient wisdom, the path that has guided many people in their search for inner peace for more than 2,000 years. I will join you on that journey through Zen stories imbued with wisdom and compassion, a place that hides the profound secrets of spiritual freedom and liberation from turbulent emotions. Each story is a door that opens new awareness. It helps you look differently at stress, let go of anger, and stop chasing endless things. These are not just bedtime stories. Rather, they are teachings preserved for thousands of years, from enlightened masters who have touched on a truth that most of us have forgotten. That peace does not lie in changing the world around us, but in the way we see and live with it. The Buddha once taught, "The mind is everything. What you think, you will become." In the coming hours, you'll gradually discover how this ancient wisdom can transform your own modern life. Together, we will walk through Zen stories of samurai who once proudly learned humility, of disciples who found wisdom where seemed simplest, and of farmers who lost everything, just to realize true freedom. And then, as you listen with your whole heart, you will feel a miracle happening. The tension in the mind gradually melts, and the grip of anxiety begins to loosen. The constant stream of thoughts in your mind will gradually subside. The mind becomes still, and you begin to settle down in a state of deep understanding and rest. The stories you are about to hear have been whispered in ancient monasteries, told around meditation lamps, and passed down through generations of seekers. Each story is a key, opening a different door in the mansion of your mind. There are doors that lead to the room where anger loses its power, leaving only stillness and clarity. There are other doors that open to voids, where all accumulated desires gradually dissipate. And there are also doors to the room of silence, where there is only pure presence to be your greatest teacher. So, right now, let yourself really calm down. Feel the body being lifted and allow it to dissolve into the surrounding tranquility. Breathe in deeply, exhale. It's slow. And when the breath relaxes, know that you are preparing to receive the teachings that await you from the beginning of the mind. And now, let's get started. The first story takes us back to ancient Japan, where the morning mist gently covers the roof of the ancient temple, and the sound of the bells fades away among the green bamboo groves. It's the story of a samurai and a Zen master. In those days, there was a proud and arrogant warrior who put honor above everything in life. The samurai's reputation echoed far and wide everywhere he went. The sword in his hand was fast and precise, but his temperament was as sharp and fierce as that sword. One day, as the flame of curiosity about the spiritual path burned in his heart, the warrior decided to reach out to a Zen master who was famous throughout the country, who was revered for his profound wisdom and boundless stillness. When he arrived, the teacher was sitting in meditation under the canopy of an ancient pine tree. His breath was so light that it didn't seem to shake the early breeze. The samurai approached, each heavy footstep making the clattering sound of the armor. The silence of the Zen master made his heart even more impatient. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore. In a firm and proud voice, he said, "Tell me, what is the nature of heaven and hell?" The sound tore apart the quiet space, like a blade cutting through the flat surface of the lake. The Zen master slowly opened one eye. His gaze was clear and calm, and then said with unexpected contempt, "Why should I answer a lowly and despicable person like you? A pitiful worm like you? I can't stand your presence. Go away, don't waste my time." The samurai's face was flushed. Anger surged in his chest, a flame-like humiliation that burned the warrior's pride. In the blink of an eye, his hand had reached the sword. The sound of steel pulling out sounded cold, and he raised his sword, ready to slash down on the teacher in front of him. At that moment, the Zen master looked straight into his eyes as gentle as a spring, and said softly, "It's hell." At that moment, time seemed to stop. The samurai was stunned. A flash of understanding surged through him, like the dawn slowly unfolding behind the distant mountains. I saw clearly. It was anger that turned my mind into hell, a world full of resentment, hatred, and pain of its own making. In that confusion, he nearly killed an innocent man, just because his words touched the proud self. The warrior's tears flowed. He put down his sword, knelt down in silence, his hands clasped together, and bowed deeply to the Zen master, from the bottom of his gratitude for the priceless lesson. The Zen master smiled. His smile was as gentle as a father seeing his lost son return, and whispered, "And it's heaven." The Buddha once taught, man is not punished for his anger, but is punished by his own anger. In that moment, the samurai understood. Heaven and hell were not far away. They are not the places we will go to after death, but the realms we create in our own minds. When the mind is filled with hatred, hell appears. When the mind is illuminated by understanding and renunciation, heaven opens up in this very present moment. Take a closer look. You'll find yourself creating your own little hells over the course of the day. Maybe someone cuts you off on the road, and in a moment, the peaceful morning suddenly turns into a storm of rage. Or a colleague walks by without responding to the greeting, and the mind immediately begins to weave stories about disrespect, about hurt ego, about feeling unrecognized. Those moments, it is a mirror that reflects the same ancient pattern. We take small external situations and unconsciously use them as raw materials to build our own hell in our minds. The old Zen master was not cruel at all. He simply, like a subtle physician, used the blade of words to open the deep wounds so that the anger that had fallen asleep in the warrior's heart would be revealed. Because that anger is not born from insults. It has always been there, just waiting for a condition to flare up. The teacher only serves as a mirror, reflecting the inner truth of the samurai back to himself. Zen master Suzuki Roshi once said, "You are inherently perfect in your own way, and you may still need a little improvement." This seemingly paradoxical statement is the essence of the spiritual journey. Even in imperfection, we have the opportunity to see the whole truth. In their most intense rage, the samurai were also in the most perfect position to wake up. Because transformation does not come from changing the outside world, but from changing the way we see it. You don't need to go far. You don't need to add anything new. Heaven reveals itself when he sees clearly the hell that his own mind has created. That is the secret of the transformation of suffering. Heaven and hell, not places, but states of mind. When our minds are overwhelmed with anger, resentment, or fear, we are living in hell, no matter how peaceful the outside. But when we look through those clouds and return to our inherently still, clear nature, heaven opens up, right now. In our Zen practice, we learn to recognize these little hells as soon as they arise. An increased heartbeat, a sharp breath, a slight spasm in the chest, all of these are signals, reminding us that we are building ourselves a world of suffering to imprison ourselves in. The Buddha taught, hatred can never be appeased by hatred. Only by love and hatred can be resolved. That is the law of eternity. The samurai understood this not with words, but with their own lived experience. His anger cannot be extinguished by violence, only by awareness and understanding. And tonight, when you feel a little tension in your heart, a fleeting discomfort or frustration, please stop. Take a deep breath, exhale slowly, and just observe. See how those thoughts and reactions are shaping the quality of your inner world. Because as the Zen master pointed out, hell or heaven, it all starts from this very mind. Meditation story, The Disciple and the Two Dogs' Heaven, always exists. It is not a reward for those who do good, but a state of nature, which is revealed when we cease to create hell in our minds. Now let's listen to a story. It takes place in an ancient monastery nestled by a quiet river, where the sound of water gently lapping on the shore is like the prayer of heaven and earth. Every morning, they walk down to the river together to bathe in the cool water. Every step, every breath is a silent prayer. The sound of water running through the rocks reminded them of impermanence, of the endless flow of life. One morning, after taking a bath, the Zen master came out of the river, the glittering drops of water on his robe reflecting the dawn. The disciples gathered around him, their eyes lit up, their notebooks in their hands, waiting for each word of wisdom to fall like morning dew. Among them, there was a young disciple who had traveled far to seek the truth. He had a burning question in his heart, a question that years of hard training had not yet found an answer. When the group returned to the monastery, he couldn't hold back any longer and asked in reverence, "Master, what do I have to do to attain enlightenment?" "I have studied the sutras, sat in meditation, and followed all the teachings, but enlightenment is still as far away as an untouched dream." The Zen master stopped. He quietly pointed to the riverbank where a dog was lying peacefully, his fur still wet, his eyes dimming in the morning sun. Occasionally, he lifted his head to look at a butterfly, listened to the bird's song, and then fell into a peaceful sleep. "Learn from it," he said quietly, and then walked on. The disciple was stunned. A moment of confusion, then a disappointment rose in him. "So much practice, so many years of practice. Are you making fun of me?" He tried to keep his voice reverent. "Teacher, what can you learn from a dog? I came here to seek the ultimate wisdom, not the behavior of animals." The teacher did not answer, just continued walking. His gentle footsteps mingled with the sound of the wind and the sound of the temple bell in the distance. But the disciple's heart stirred up again, full of frustration and wounded pride. He spoke again. "I don't want to learn from him. Please teach me something profound. What will help me reach enlightenment?" At this time, he stopped. He pointed to another dog, gnawing on some leftovers on the side of the road, its tail wagging slightly, its eyes shining with joy simply because he had just found breakfast. Then, "Learn from it," he said, still in a voice as light as the wind. The disciple could no longer keep his composure. "Teacher, are you kidding me? What can you learn from an animal that only knows how to eat and sleep? I'm here to get beyond such trivial things." The Zen master turned to look at him. His eyes were compassionate and smiled slightly. "I eat and sleep too," said the teacher, and then quietly entered the meditation, leaving the disciple standing silently in the wind. The Buddha taught, 3 things cannot be hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth. The truth in this story is so simple that we often overlook it. The wisdom I seek, in fact, it has always been in every breath, every meal, every sleep, every moment of everyday life. The disciple was trapped in the trap of material spirituality, the desire for enlightenment to be a special achievement, something that set him apart from others. But Buddha nature, the unconditionally clear essence, is present even in the simplest of existence. The dog lying on the riverbank, a manifestation of complete settlement in the present. It doesn't try to be someone else. It doesn't run after anything. It simply exists. The dog is eating leftovers, a lesson in gratitude and acceptance. It doesn't judge, doesn't compare, eats only when it's hungry, and lives fully in that moment. And we, humans, often complicate things. We meditate, but we're worried that we're meditating wrong. We are mindful, but we judge the wandering mind. We seek enlightenment, but that very search has become a form of suffering. His final teaching, "I also eat and sleep," is a reminder to be awake, that whether we meditate, read, or work, everything can be meditation, if we are fully present in it. In a Zen monastery, sweeping the floor, cooking, or tending to plants are all forms of practice. Because when the mind is fully present, every action becomes sacred. As the Buddha taught, if you want to know the past, look at your present body and mind. If you want to know the future, look at what you're doing today. The 2 dogs don't worry about the past, nor do they think about the future. They live only in the eternal present, with beautiful simplicity, a lesson that takes a lifetime to understand. When we live fully in every breath, eat when we are hungry, sleep when we are tired, and smile when we are at peace, then that place is heaven. Next story, The Farmer and the Cows. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, ask yourself softly in your heart, can you sleep naturally as the 2 dogs once did? No trying, no bothering, no asking. Can you breathe, let go, and meet the simplest human needs without turning them into complex spiritual projects? Because, as the Zen master once said, the deepest wisdom is often hidden in the most ordinary experiences. Now, let's listen to another story, a lesson in attachment and freedom, through a simple encounter between the Buddha and a desperate peasant. At noon, in the quiet forest, the Buddha sat with his monks after they shared a simple meal in gratitude. They eat mindfully. They are grateful for the grain of rice. They are grateful to the sower. They are grateful to heaven and earth for nourishing their body and mind. The sunlight filters through the foliage, creating streaks of light that are intertwined like silk strips. A light breeze blew through, carrying the scent of weeds and wildflowers. And then the silence was broken by the sound of hurried footsteps and gasping breath. A peasant appeared, his face flushed with fear, his clothes ragged and his eyes rolling in despair. "Ladies and gentlemen, do you see my cows?" His voice trembled, almost choking. "Please help me, I beg. This morning, all 12 of my cows all ran away, and this season my sesame plants were also destroyed by worms. Everything I had ever done, relied on, was lost. There was nothing left. Without them, I'm nobody." The Buddha listened quietly. His gaze was gentle, as deep as the surface of a lake without ripples. He understood the suffering in the heart of the farmer, the suffering of a man who loses his grip by placing all his security on external things. "Sir," said the Buddha, "we have not seen your cows. Maybe they went in a different direction." The farmer bowed his head in thanks and then hurriedly ran away, calling the names of each cow and disappearing into the deep forest. When he had left, the Buddha turned to the monks. In his eyes there was a gentle smile, the smile of a man who saw the nature of suffering. "Teachers," he said, "do you know, am I the happiest person in the world? Because you have no cows to lose." The monks were silent, sitting in the middle of the sunny forest. In their hearts, a wave of knowledge arose, that it is simplicity that true wealth. They don't have property, but they have freedom. There is no wealth, but there is peace. There is no clinging, so there is no fear. The Buddha continued, his voice floating like a cool stream. "We always try to accumulate a lot, thinking that these things will guarantee happiness. But sometimes they themselves become shackles. Let go of your cows. Drop the things that weigh you down, and you'll know what freedom is." He taught, "I just lose what I cling to." The suffering of the farmer does not lie in the loss of the cow, but in the identification of himself with the cow. As for the monks, they have given up their possessions, so there is nothing left to fear. So do we. We cling to work, money, reputation, roles, relationships, or even spiritual ideal. We think they make us worth. But it can all change. What the Buddha taught was not to let go of responsibility, but to let go of the attachment in the mind. Still working, still loving, but with a free mind, not dependent on results. At that time, we begin to hold on to things gently, to use them without being used by them, to enjoy them without losing ourselves. The farmer forever searches for his cows in the forest, and the monks sit still and find treasure that is never lost. As Zen master Huangba once said, "My treasure is right in me. It's always been full before I went looking for it." Let go of your cows to see that what we thought we had lost was just an illusion of clinging. Tonight, before you close out the long day, ask yourself, can you let go of the things you're still trying to hold on to? Will you be able to touch peace, sprouting from the very place where there is nothing left to lose? Because in this moment, you already have everything you need. The Buddha once taught that the cessation of suffering does not come from achieving what we want, but from the fact that we know how to let go of clinging to that very desire. And in that renunciation, we realize what the monks once knew, that we were already free, that we had returned home a long time ago. It was just that while we were engrossed in chasing the cows, we had forgotten. Amidst the misty-shrouded mountains of feudal Japan, where the legends of famous swordsmen echo, there is a story about the paradox of learning, of speed and patience, of achievement and letting go. That's the story of Matajuro and the taste of the sword that his teacher Banzo gave him. At that time, in the distant mountains of Futara, lived a legendary swordsman named Banzo. His fame spread throughout the country, attracting countless people to learn the secret of mastering swordsmanship. Among them, there was a young man named Matajuro Yagyu, the son of a famous great swordsman. However, bitterly, it was his father who refused to teach him, saying that he was not talented enough to inherit. Shame and the desire for recognition have ignited in Matajuro an intense fire. He dived to meet Banzo, bowed deeply. "Master, please accept me as a disciple. I am willing to endure all kinds of asceticism, and I only hope to learn swordsmanship under your instruction." Banzo looked at him for a long time, and then replied, "I'm afraid you don't have the patience to go this way." Matajuro hurriedly asked, "If you practice hard, how long can you become a master?" Bonzo replied calmly, "My whole life." The words fell like a slash. The boy couldn't believe it. "If you give your best, work day and night, how long?" 10 years, Bonzo replied. "What if you are doubly dedicated, shorten everything?" 30 years. "Why? The more effort you make, the longer the time." Bonzo smiled because the one who is in a hurry to achieve results is the one who learns the slowest. And so Matajuro understood. He bowed his head in acceptance. From then on, he was not allowed to hold a sword, nor was he allowed to talk about the sword. Day after day, he only cooks, cleans, splits firewood, and sweeps the yard. 3 years passed, not a single lesson in swordsmanship, just the repetition of small, simple tasks. Then one morning, while Matajuro was cooking rice, Banzo suddenly appeared behind him and delivered a blow with a wooden sword. Matajuro was startled, almost fell. From that day, anytime, anywhere, he was always in a ready mood. Bonzo can attack at any time, morning or night. And Matajuro learned to feel. Hear the rhythm of his footsteps, smell the vibrating air, and even recognize the intention before the blow happened. He no longer thinks about swordsmanship. He becomes swordsmanship. Over time, Matajuro reached a realm where his every movement was natural, precise, and unthinkable. Bonzo smiled, the smile of someone who knew that his student understood. The Buddha taught, "Every small drop of water will fill the bottle for a long time. In the same way, a wise person who accumulates every bit of good dharma will eventually be fulfilled." That story shows us that mastery is not born from forced effort, but from mindfulness and patience. We often believe that faster means better, that if we try twice as hard, we will get what we want sooner. But on the path of practice, haste is the biggest obstacle. Banzo showed his students, and to all of us, that it is not the intensity, but the quality of the attention that determines the depth of learning. 3 years of cooking rice, sweeping the yard is not a waste, but meditation in action. With every breath, every stroke of the brush, Matajuro trained his mind to be calm and sensitive. And when the real sword appeared, he was ready, because he was no longer divided between learning and living. Tonight, if you find yourself impatient, wanting to be faster, better, achieve more, stop for a moment. Take a deep breath. Exhale slowly. And remember, sometimes slowing down is the fastest way to go deep. As Matajuro has discovered, the real sword that we are learning to master is the sword of perception. Meditation stories, ghosts know everything. In a small village where cherry blossom petals fall quietly on a quiet road, there is a young couple who live together in sincere and deep love. Their love is simple yet pure, making the world around them seem brighter. Every morning begins with a thank you, and each evening ends with gratitude for still being together. But, like everything in life, that happiness eventually touches the shadow of impermanence. The young wife was seriously ill, even though they were cared for, even though they prayed in desperation. They both knew. Death is approaching. As her strength gradually left her slender body, her love brightened up again, as if she was pouring all the love of her life into her final moments with her husband. "I love you so much," she whispered in her last breath. "I don't want to leave you. Promise me. Never go to another woman. If you do, I'll come back like a ghost to make you never be alone." The husband, choking on tears, nodded, and just a few minutes later she passed away gently, peacefully in the arms of her beloved. The world suddenly became silent, empty, and colorless. 3 months passed, and the husband still kept his vow. He took care of the grave every day, chatting with her remains, and couldn't imagine that he could fall in love with anyone else. But then, the pain, no matter how deep, nor can it last forever. One afternoon, when a neighbor woman brought food, they chatted for a bit, and for the first time, he laughed. That laughter was light, but it seemed to awaken something in my heart. As time passed, the two got closer to each other. And finally, he decided to get engaged, saying to himself, "Perhaps my ex-wife will want me to be happy too." But that night, as the moonlight descended on the room, his peaceful sleep was ripped apart. She appears, the deceased wife. The face is distorted by anger and jealousy. "I promised," she shouted. "I swore never to love someone else. How can you betray me so quickly?" From that night, she came back every night. It was getting more and more terrifying. She talked about the gifts he gave to new people, words, dates, even the most private moments. "I know everything," the ghost whispered. Every thought, every touch, every word of love, it should all belong to you. The man withered day by day, lost sleep, collapsed. The fiancé was worried, but he couldn't tell the truth that the ghost of his ex-wife is haunting his life. Finally, following the advice of a neighbor, he turned to a Zen master who lived in seclusion in a small temple on the edge of the village. The Zen master listened for a long time. When the man finished speaking, he just stroked his beard and smiled. "Oh, my ex-wife is indeed a very clever ghost. How does she know all that you do? Great. It's admirable." The man looked at the teacher, confused, not understanding whether the Zen master was joking or teaching. He continued, in a voice as soft as the wind. "The next time she appears, say, if she really knows everything, please answer me a question. If she answers, I promise to annul the marriage and live alone for the rest of my life. Then take a handful of beans and ask her, 'How many beans are in my hand?'" The man bowed his head in obedience. That night, the ghost reappeared, angry, blameful, and knowing everything. He said calmly, "You're so wise, I can't hide anything from you. So, tell me, how many beans do you have in your hand?" The room was silent, the moonlight faded, and ghosts dissolved. Since then, she has never returned. The Zen master taught, the secret of existence is fearlessness. The ghost is not an external entity, but a shadow of sin, of memory, of attachment in a man's heart. She knew everything, because it was his mind that was telling everything, creating that omniscient figure. So do we. Each person has its own ghosts, voices of regret, of parents, of failure, or of an old unbroken love. They seem to understand us, know our weakest places, and know how to cause us pain. But in fact, it is all just a reflection of the mind. When we look straight and ask our minds a question that the illusion cannot answer, like holding a bean in a man's hand, the ghost dissolves, for darkness cannot exist before the light of perception. And then, you might ask yourself, what ghosts are still whispering in your mind? Are they just echoes of the past, not this present? If you are still enough to observe, they will also disappear in the very clarity of the mind, just as the ghosts of old disappear in the moonlight. Meditation story. The 10th Pilgrim. Among the ancient pilgrimage routes, winding through hills and deep forests, there is a story that has been passed down of finding what has never really been lost. On that day, 10 young monks set off for a distant holy place. They passed through the misty mountains, through the quiet valleys, their hearts filled with devotion and the desire for enlightenment. Every step is a prayer. Every mile is a test of mind and body. That path not only leads to the holy place, it also leads them gradually into the depths of their own hearts. One day they came to a vicious river. The spring water overflowed, rolling fast, white and foaming. The sound of it echoed like the roar of the thousands. To get through, they had to hold hands, each leaning against the person next to him, walking, praying for the safety of all. Step by step, the water rose to their chests, the stones under their feet were slippery, but they still advanced with trust and courage. Eventually, they made it to the other side. The group fell into the damp, wet sand, their hearts pounding, but full of gratitude for surviving. The leader of the group, feeling a heavy responsibility, immediately said, "Please line up, brothers. I have to make sure it's all safe." They stood in a line and the leader began to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He stopped, his face changed. Impossible. There are only 9 people. He counted again, but each time it stopped at 9. He cried out in pain, "One of us has been swept away by the water." The group was stunned. Everyone counted themselves, and it was strange. They only saw 9 too. Fear spreads, then turns into sadness. They wept, they prayed, they called out the name of their lost friend. At that moment, a traveler passed by. Seeing the scene, he stopped. In front of him were clearly 10 monks, 10 bodies, 10 faces, 10 cries. He walked over and asked softly, "What makes you so sad?" The group leader looked up, his eyes filled with tears. "Sir, we have 10 people, but when crossing the river, only 9 remained. One of our brothers have been swept away." The stranger looked around, smiling gently. He counted 1, 2, 3, up to 10. Then he said softly, "Master, please count again." The group leader repeated, his voice choked up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The stranger smiled slightly. "Sir, what about himself? He forgot to count himself." An encompassing silence. The group leader looked down and realized, "I'm still here. It's all here. No one was lost. The whole group was stunned and then laughed, and the laughter resounded in the middle of the forest like a flowing stream, both innocent and happy. The 10th pilgrim has been found, not outside, but right within them. The Buddha once taught, "Let's go inside. Inside is the fountain of all good things, and it will always flow if you just dig down." This story is a metaphor for every spiritual journey. We are busy seeking happiness, peace, enlightenment, here and there, through techniques, achievements, or others. But like those monks, we often forget. Count yourself. We see everything, thoughts, feelings, experiences, but forget who is seeing it all. The pilgrim's pain of losing a brother is the pain of man who thinks he is missing something, a piece of the puzzle, a piece of happiness, a wholeness. But wisdom, like the wise traveler, brings nothing new. It just gently points out what is already there and always has been. Enlightenment is not about gaining anything. It's just the moment we stop and remember, I've never been lost. 10 pilgrims are enough, just as in me, which is enough, but sometimes I forget to count myself. Final verdicts. Tonight, before closing your eyes, you can try to stop for a moment and ask, who is the one who is looking for me? Perhaps, when you recognize yourself, that 10th pilgrim will smile, because at last, you have returned home. Meditation story, Zengai and the tunnel through the mountains. The next story leads us to the transformative power of sincere remorse and how selfless service can heal the deepest wounds of the soul. Back then, in the bustling capital of Edo, where samurai strode through the streets and the sound of sails was everywhere, there was a young man named Zengai. Born into a lineage of martial artists, he was taught strictly about honor and duty. But like many other young people, Zengai's heart was swept away by the winds of passion and desire. He became a subordinate of a great official, and then that closeness led him to his master's wife. Clumsy glances turned into sneaky dates. Taboo love blossomed, and then tragedy struck. When the relationship was discovered, the official's wrath flared up. In a fit of fear and confusion, Zengai drew his sword and killed his master. Blood is shed, honor is broken. He and the woman fled, carrying guilt and despair. But time gradually reveals the true nature of the woman, greedy, scheming, and selfish. Zengai disgusts herself and eventually leaves her, wandering alone to a remote mountainous region. In that desolate place, Zengai lost everything: armor for a coarse cloth, a sword for a begging bowl. But the biggest change is his heart. During those quiet days, he encountered a dangerous pass. Standing in front of the cliff, a great wish arose in Zengai's heart. He would dig a tunnel through the mountain so that future generations could walk safely. Not to be forgiven, not for redemption. It's just because it's the right thing to do. With rudimentary tools, Zengai began digging mountains. The day begs, the night returns to the torch. The villagers thought he was crazy, a man who wanted to cross the mountains with only his bare hands. But he didn't stop. Day by day, year after year, 30 years passed. His hands were scarred, his back was bent, but the tunnel grew longer, 2,280 feet, 20 feet high, 30 feet wide. Each chisel is a penance, a meditative breath. Then one day, the past came. The son of the slain official, now an expert swordsman, had tracked down his father. When confronted by Zengai, who was old and emaciated, the boy declared, "I came to avenge my father." Zengai calmly replied, "I'm not hiding, but please wait until this tunnel is completed. At that time, you can take my head." The swordsman agreed. But then, he began to witness. Witness Zengai's tireless perseverance. Witness his thin hands still chiseling stones day and night. And something strange happened. The hatred gradually dissipated. He began to help. Originally to pass the time, and then because of admiration. The person he was about to kill became a teacher who taught him about compassion and service. When the tunnel was completed, the villagers rejoiced, and the children laughed under the light through the rocks. Zengai turned to the swordsman and said softly, "Now cut off my head. The job is done." The boy burst into tears. "How can I kill my teacher?" The Buddha taught, hatred cannot be extinguished by hatred. Only love can soothe hatred. It is the law of eternity. Zengai's story shows that sincere remorse not only transforms the wrongdoer, but also awakens the wounded souls. That tunnel is a symbol of transformation. A great prayer that transcends the ego, transcends fear and shame. Zengai didn't seek forgiveness. He just dedicated the rest of his life to the service of life. Every hammer blow against the cliff is a prayer, and every callus on the hand is a sign of awakening. And then, he who had been a sinner became honorable, loved. Not because the past has been erased, but because he has allowed the past to be the fuel for the light. As the Buddha said, every drop of water fills the bottle. In the same way, every small act of goodwill, every moment of service will accumulate into liberation. Tonight, as you settle down in your breath, look at what is still waiting to be resolved. Can you, like Zengai, turn mistakes into paths to loving kindness and freedom? Because sometimes it is the heaviest burdens that become the foundation for the most sacred. In the small monastery hidden in the mist of the high mountains, there is a monk named Gessen, who is both revered and rumored. He was a talented painter. His brushstrokes could breathe life into the wings of birds in flight, bringing landscapes on paper to life. Yet, in the midst of pure meditation, Gessen had a strange reputation. He was called a stingy monk. Before starting any painting, he always demanded to pay up front, and his price was not small. Many people saw this and criticized him, saying that he was clouded by greed. They don't understand why a person who has let go of the world would care so much about money. One evening, a beautiful geisha comes to Gessen. She bowed her head gently. "Mr. Gessen, I want to ask you to paint me a picture." He calmly asked, "How much can you pay?" Geisha smiled slightly, his eyes full of mystery. "It's up to you to set the price. But I have a request. Please paint that picture in front of me while I am receiving guests." Gessen nodded. A few days later, he was invited to her house. The room was bathed in the soft golden light of the lanterns. The aroma of sake was strong, and the sound of the piano was echoing. In the midst of this lavish atmosphere, Gessen sat down quietly, arranged his tools, and began to paint. Each of his brushstrokes is fluid and steady, unmoved by the laughter, teasing, or enchanting charm that is going on around him. When the painting was completed, he stated the price, the highest ever. The geisha paid immediately, without hesitation, but then she turned to her guest and said in a half-laughing and half-contemptuous voice, "Look, this monk only knows money. His paintings may be beautiful, but his soul is dirty. Such a work only deserves to be painted on my underwear." The whole room laughed. She deliberately took off her silk bra, handed it to him, and then said sarcastically, "Draw another one on the back." Unexpectedly, Gessen just looked at her calmly, asking, "How much will you pay?" That question made her pause, then laughed, accepting the challenge. "Whatever you want," she replied. Gessen set an even higher price than before, and the geisha agreed. He took the brush, cautiously, and leisurely painted on the silk with complete concentration as if it were a sacred work. When he finished, he accepted the money, bowed, and left, his expression still peaceful, without any anger or shame. Years later, when Gessen had left the area, the truth was discovered. All the money he earned in his life, he did not keep it for himself. He used it to quietly accomplish three great things. First, he built a secret food storehouse, filled with rice and necessities to relieve the villagers from starvation whenever natural disasters and crops failed. Secondly, he rebuilt the rough and dangerous pilgrimage route, helping many worshippers no longer slip and fall and get injured. And finally, he completed the sacred temple, the unfinished wish of the deceased teacher. When these three wishes were fulfilled, Gessen let go of his brush, left painting, and quietly hid himself in the mountains. He was called a stingy artist, but as it turned out, he was one of the most generous and compassionate people. The Buddha once taught, "Don't be in a hurry to believe something just because someone else says it. Don't be quick to judge anyone just because of what you see." People look at Gessen asking for money and conclude that he is greedy, but no one knows that every penny is a seed of compassion. We, too, tend to look at others through superficial behavior, forgetting that behind it may be a whole story that we don't understand. Zen teaches, "The mind of judgment is the mind that does not see the whole picture." A person may behave differently than we do, but the motive is rooted in deep goodwill. Gessen didn't care about fame. He didn't need anyone to understand him. He just quietly did what he needed to do to serve others. The Buddha also said, "Thousands of candles can be lit from one candle, and that candle does not fade faster. Happiness never diminishes when shared." Jessen's granary, the road, and the temple, those are the three candles he left for his life. That light continues to spread, even though he has left the world. So when we see someone behaving differently, pause for a moment before judging. Perhaps behind that confusing appearance is a heart that is silently lighting up the world, like Jessen, the painter of compassion. From the halls of academic debate, where words carry weight and misunderstandings sometimes become a source of laughter, we come together with a story that tells the deep nature of communication. It is the story of the one-eyed monk and the itinerant debater. In the middle of northern Japan, where the mountains are covered in snow all year round, there is a small temple hidden in silence. The two monk brothers lived there, took care of the temple together, preserving the ancient tradition. Any traveling monk who came to ask for residency had to participate in a Buddhist debate. Only when they win will they be allowed to stay. This custom is both a way to preserve the purity of the teachings and an opportunity to nurture wisdom for the hermit community in the middle of the snowy mountains. The eldest brother is famous for being erudite. All his life, he was immersed in the scriptures, his mind as sharp as a blade, able to dissect every detail of the teachings. The younger brother was the opposite, sketchy, uneducated, and only one eye left after an accident many years ago. To most people, he was a simple, slow man who rarely discussed philosophy in depth. One afternoon, when it was snowing heavily, a traveling monk knocked on the door asking for shelter. According to the ritual, he made a request to debate the doctrine. The eldest brother was too tired after a long day of studying, so he said to his younger brother, "Today, take my place. But remember, this dialogue takes place in silence. Let wisdom be manifested through gestures, not words." The younger brother was worried but obedient. Under the flickering candlelight, the two monks sat opposite each other in the quiet worship room. A wordless debate begins, and then it will be understood by two completely different people. The traveling monk, full of confidence, raises a finger, signifying solemnity as the beginning of a sermon. After a moment's hesitation, the young monk replied with 2 fingers. The traveler smiled, raising 3 fingers. Immediately, the young monk's face turned red. He clenched his fists and put it straight in front of his opponent. The traveler was startled, then immediately stood up, bowed, and left in the cold snow. He went to his eldest brother and said with deep admiration, "Your younger brother is extraordinary. Our conversation goes beyond words." I lost completely. Surprised, the eldest brother asked what had happened. The traveling monk said with enthusiasm, "First, I held up a finger, symbolizing the Buddha, the enlightened one." His brother responded with 2 fingers, symbolizing the Buddha and the Dharma, teaching that enlightenment is inseparable from the teachings that manifest it. I continued to raise 3 fingers, denoting the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony in the Dharma. But then he clenched his hands, showing that all 3 were one, coming from the same entity of enlightenment. I was amazed. It's rare to see a master reach such a level of wisdom. Saying that, he bowed and disappeared into the snow, his heart full of admiration. At the same time, the young monk ran to his brother, his face still red with anger. "Where is he? I have to teach him a lesson." The brother was surprised. "He said that you won the debate and even praised your deep intellect." The younger brother was indignant. What wisdom? As soon as he saw me, he held up a finger, mocking that I only had one eye. I politely raised 2 fingers to congratulate him on having enough of both. Yet he held up 3 fingers, meaning that there were only 3 eyes in total between the 2 of us. It's chaotic. I was going to punch him, but he ran away. The Buddha once taught, "We are what we think. Everything we are arises from thoughts. With my thoughts, I create the world." That little story is a vivid proof. 2 people witness the same thing, but each lives in a separate world of meaning. The traveling monk sees the wisdom of meditation, and the young monk sees ridicule. Neither of them is wrong within the framework of their own minds. The traveler carried an academic lens, so he saw that every gesture contained the teachings. And the younger brother has an inferior self-esteem, so he only sees insults. Each person's attitude determines the world they experience. And it happens to us every day. When someone doesn't respond to a greeting, we assume they're indifferent, without knowing that they're struggling with their own worries. When someone cancels a last-minute appointment, we think they don't value friendship, Without knowing, they're struggling to cope with the pressure. The eldest brother in the story is a symbol of observational wisdom, knowing how to step back, not in a hurry to believe his first interpretation. His gentle question opens up the space for the truth to be revealed. The humor of the story is not only for laughs, but to reflect the fragility of human media. Because even if we speak the same language and live in the same culture, everyone's inner world can still be so different that no one seems to really understand anyone. Zen master Huangba once said, "The fool denies what he sees, but the wise deny what he thinks." The two monks in the story both rejected what they really saw, simple gestures, in order to cling to what they thought. The story also reminds us that what we expect will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whoever expects wisdom will see wisdom. Those who are afraid of being offended will find offense. The only way to break that cycle is to stop and ask, when you raise that finger, what do you really mean? As the Buddha said, don't believe anything, even if it's said by me, if it's not in harmony with your own true reason and understanding. We all wear such lenses, made up of our own pasts, fears, and beliefs. They color reality, making us think that we are seeing the truth, but in reality, we are only looking through our own mirror. Finally, one person leaves in the middle of a snowy night, believing that he has met a sage. Another stays, believing that he has just been humiliated. None of them actually communicate with the other. And that's human comedy. Each person lives in a world of their own meaning, rarely stopping to ask if others see anything like him. As we continue our journey through the pages of Zen Buddhism's wisdom, we come to a story about the transformative power of unconditional compassion, where sincere care can melt away shame more effectively than any punishment, and the unexpected reaction of the master. On a temple in the middle of a mountain, where the evening bell rings amidst the thin mist, Master Sengai teaches meditation to a group of dedicated students. Temple life follows an ancient rhythm: early morning meditation, quiet lunch at noon, afternoon work in the garden, and evening to listen to the Dharma talk before resting. Most of the students find peace in that framework. However, human nature is inherently complicated. Among the disciples, there was a young man who often felt suffocated with a strict routine. During the day, he still sits and meditates hard, completing all the work without complaints. But when night came, when the temple sank into silence, a strange urge rose again in his heart, like a tide that he could not resist. One night, he discovered that with a low wooden chair, he could climb over the temple wall and hide in the town at the foot of the mountain. There, amidst the bright lanterns, the lively music, and the sweet yeast of wine, he temporarily forgot the precepts, temporarily away from the heavy silence of the meditation hall. He said to himself, "It's just a little relaxation. There's no harm." And night after night, the ritual of hiding and then sneaking back before dawn became a habit. But nothing could hide Sengai-sensei's keen eyes. One night, while going to check, he noticed the young student's absence and spotted a wooden chair leaning against the wall. The teacher quietly took the chair and sat down in its proper place, waiting in the cold night, in the thick darkness. Almost in the morning, the student returned, a little yeast-still king, mixed with a little guilt and worry in his heart. Not knowing that the teacher had changed the chair, he put his foot on the chair as usual and stepped directly on the shoulder of his own teacher. He was stunned. The truth struck like lightning. He had stepped on his teacher. His face was flushed, his heart was pounding, and he could only stand still, waiting for the wrath to strike. But Sengai just stood up slowly, dusted off his shirt, and said softly, "It's very cold tonight. Remember to stay warm lest you catch a cold." Then he walked quietly, leaving the student standing in the moonlight, tears falling on the cold courtyard. From that night, he never climbed the wall again. Not out of fear, but because he had touched a love so tolerant that it made all the desire to escape dissipate. The Buddha taught, hatred cannot be extinguished by hatred. Only with compassion and hatred can it be appeased. Sengai's reaction is proof of that. He did not need to be reprimanded nor punished. His loving kindness did what no discipline could not, awaken the student from within. This story raises a profound question. Why do we believe that only punishment prevents people from reoffending? Zen Buddhism points out that shame dissolves itself when surrounded by unconditional acceptance. The boy's nighttime escapes are not really for fun, but because of fear and the feeling of being trapped in the midst of lofty ideals that he has not yet attained. Just like us, when we try to show patience, calmness, and perfection, deep down there is a storm that no one knows. When Sengai chose to become the living stool, he did not act out of weakness, but because he understood people better than any punishment. That silence is not weakness, but active love. Putting kindness above honor, putting the salvation of the student above personal self-respect. He did not speak of mistakes, nor of deception. Instead, he only cares about the health and well-being of his students. It was that tenderness that broke down the wall of defense, made him look directly at himself and make real change from within. The tears in the temple yard that night were not because of fear, but because they were understood. The student seeks joy and external acceptance, but realizes that the love he has been looking for is right here, in the teacher's compassionate heart. Zen master Suzuki Roshi once said, "In the mind of a beginner, there are countless possibilities. In the minds of professionals, there are very few left." Sengai keeps the mind of the beginner open, tolerant, non-judgmental. He did not seek to correct mistakes, but sought to touch the painful part of the student's heart. The Buddha taught, 3 things can renew humanity: an open heart, kind words, and a life of compassion. Sengai lived all 3. He opened his heart, spoke with care, and dedicated himself to the awakening of others. Tonight, as you recall the times when you or others made mistakes, can you try to react like Sengai? Not judgmental, but curious. Not criticizing, but supporting. For sometimes the most profound lesson comes not from words or discipline, but from the silent presence of love. The love that can thaw the ice in the heart and awaken in us the light of true transformation. Story 11. The Letter Through Death. As we continue our journey through Zen Buddhism's wisdom, let's stop at the thin line between life and death, where fear touches wisdom and death reveals the door to immortality. This is the story of the letter that Zen Master Basui sent to a dying disciple, a teaching that transcends birth and death. In a small temple, hidden under cherry blossoms that have witnessed many seasons of blooming, Zen Master Basui once led many students to overcome the illusions and attachments of the mind. His teachings were straightforward and simple, always straight to the core, helping the listener to touch his true nature. Among these devoted disciples, there was one who had been practicing for many years, devoted himself to Zen, diligently sitting down, listening to the Dharma, and gradually opening up his wisdom. But then, when the illness came and his body gradually deteriorated, the student had to face what every human being feared the most, his own disintegration. When he heard the news, Zen Master Basui understood that this was the greatest teaching moment in his student's life. He took a pen and wrote a short letter, but it contained the essence of a lifetime of practice. "My dear friend, I know you are facing a great transformation. Remember what you used to know, but perhaps forget for a moment in the midst of this pain. The nature of your mind is not born, so it will never die. It's not something that can be perished. It has no pictures, no colors. It's not fun, and it doesn't hurt. It's just pure awareness. Every sentence, every word is like a cool breeze, gently separating the dying person's mind from the painful body, bringing attention back to the person who is aware of the pain. I know you are very sick," he continued, "but ask yourself, who is suffering? Just think about this. You won't need anything more." And then, the last words of the letter are a mysterious image. Don't hold on to anything. Let yourself dissolve, like a snowflake blending into pure air. The letter was brought to the disciple who was lying on his hospital bed. When he finished reading, those around him noticed a miraculous change. His breathing gradually became lighter, his face relaxed. He no longer resisted or feared, but was silent with the teacher's question, "What is the nature of this mind?" When he left this life, his face lit up like a snowflake melting in the air. No resistance, no regrets. Simply return to what has always been. The Buddha once taught, of all the meditation halls, meditation on death is the noblest. And through that letter, Basui pointed out that death is not the end, but a realization. We are only afraid of death when we mistakenly believe that we are this body, this memory, this name. But when we realize that our true nature is infinite awareness, death is just a door that opens. Nothing is lost. He wrote, "My mind is not born, so I can't die." That is the primordial face, the Buddha nature. Awareness is listening to these words. It is not born when the child is born, nor is it lost when the body returns to dust. Everything changes: body, thoughts, emotions. But what is seeing that change has never changed. Like waves on the surface of the sea, pleasure and suffering come and go, but the deep ocean below is still silent, motionless. Death, therefore, is not a disappearance, but a return, like a snowflake melting into the sky. Basui reminded, don't hold on to anything. Because when we try to cling to our bodies, our reputations, or even our cultivation merits, we create suffering for ourselves. Only when we let go can we truly see that what we fear losing has never been lost. Zen Master Dogen once said, to study the Tao is to learn oneself. To learn yourself is to forget yourself. To forget oneself is to be illuminated by all things. Death, therefore, is only the last chance for us to forget ourselves, to realize that which is always there, unchanging, transparent, infinite. The Buddha taught, there is no true peace until we overcome the fear of life and death. And Basui, with a short letter, opened the way, the path back to that which was never born and never lost. Tonight, as you close your eyes and rest in the stillness of awareness, who is witnessing every sensation, thought, and dream pass? Do you feel what Zen Master Basui once pointed out? Do you realize that even the fear of death is only something to be seen, while what is seen, that perception, is immortal, still, and never touched? The deepest peace comes not from the assurance that we will live forever, but from the awakening of our true nature. It is that realization where birth and death come and go together, like snowflakes melting into the endless sky of the mind. Now, join me in listening to another story, a story of priority and compassion, of a monk named Tetsugan, and of the invisible sutras he left behind for his life. In the misty mountains of Japan, where the sound of woodpeckers echoes through the deep forest, there is a Zen master with a burning heart for a single mission: to make the Buddha's teachings accessible to everyone. At that time, precious scriptures were only written in kanji, and most Japanese people could not read them. Tetsugan dreamed of printing the first Japanese sutra, an almost impossible project, 7,000 copies, hand-carved on wood, that required enormous amounts of money and immeasurable effort. However, with a firm belief and deep aspiration, he began his journey. Tetsugan walked from village to village, temple to temple, carrying only the monk's bowl and a heart full of trust. The rich donated gold, the poor gave a few small coins, and he bowed his head in equal gratitude, for in his eyes, the heart was more precious than the value of money. 10 years passed, and Tetsugan gathered little by little, until he had enough to start carving. But at that moment, the flood came. The Uji River broke its banks, crops were lost, and thousands of people starved. Tetsugan looked at the money he had accumulated for 10 years, and without hesitation, he used it all to buy rice, medicine, and save lives. The dream disappears, but compassion is written in action. When the famine passed, he started again, step by step, call by call. People continue to support it because they understand that such a monk puts love above all projects. Already, another epidemic came, and this time, Tetsugan did what he had done: let go of his dreams to save people. All funds are used for medicine, food, and patient care. Twice, he raised funds, twice gave it all, in exchange for life for people in suffering. The third time, he started again. But now his fame has spread far and wide. People don't just support a project, they support a heart. And sometimes they even hope that if another disaster happens, their money will be used to save lives again. 20 years later, Tetsugan finally fulfilled his wish. 7,000 sutras were printed, wooden blocks were meticulously carved, and the Dharma spread throughout Japan. The prints are preserved at Obaku Temple in Kyoto, tangible evidence of a lifetime of devotion. But people tell their children and grandchildren a different, deeper story. Tetsugan didn't just print one set of sutras, but 3. The first 2 invisible sets: the hungry are fed and the sick are saved. The Buddha once taught, if you really love yourself, you won't harm anyone, because everyone else is yourself. The story of Tetsugan teaches us that wisdom does not lie in accomplishment, but in prioritizing compassion over results. We often want to build eternal things, monuments, lifelong accomplishments. But Tetsugun's invisible sutras remind us that sometimes the most profound achievements are acts of kindness that leave no trace other than the hearts that are touched. Tonight, as you think about your intentions, about the long-term goals you're pursuing, ask yourself, can I let go of my plans if someone needs help right now? Like Tetsugan, can you keep your dreams light enough to put down when compassion calls your name? Because sometimes the greatest scriptures are not written on paper, but are etched into our lives. In the moments when we choose to love, choose to give, and leave invisible ripples of compassion that spread far and wide. The story of Master Hayakujo. Don't do, don't eat. Now, let's listen to a story about dignity, purpose in life, and the deep connection between service and nurturing that transcends any notion of rest or retirement. This is the story of Zen Master Hayakujo, who throughout his life preserved the spirit of work as a form of meditation. In the midst of the misty mountains of China, where the early morning smoke bends around the terraced gardens, and the sound of raking pebbles sounds steadily like the breathing of a monastery, there is a teacher in his 80s, still working every day with his disciples. With a slightly cuffed figure, slowly but steadily, Master Hayakujo swept the paths, trimmed the fruit trees, and tended each flower bush with the meticulousness of one who understood that every stroke of pulling, every stroke of the broom, affected the life of the entire garden. His wrinkled, gritty hands move with gentle dexterity, as if everything he does is meditation. The students observed with admiration mixed with worry. "Master, you have taught us more than enough. Please rest, let us serve for you." But Master just smiled and quietly returned to his work as if he hadn't heard that advice. Day after day it was repeated until the disciples decided, out of mercy, to hide all the tools, rakes, scissors, brooms, hose, so that I don't have to work anymore. The next morning, Hayakujo went to look for him. I don't see it. He was silent, then returned to his room. That day, for the first time in decades, he didn't work and didn't eat either. On the second day, everything was still the same. On the third day, the students panicked. If you keep fasting like this, what if you have any destiny? They discussed and then decided to return all the tools to their original place. The next morning, Hayakujo found them there, picked them up, and quietly returned to the garden. That evening, he ate with everyone, calm as if nothing had happened. After the meal, Master gathered the disciples around him and said in a calm but bright voice like a bell, "I understand your compassion, but there is an immutable principle in this universe. Don't do it. Don't eat. No one imposes that law. It is a law of nature. The bird that does not look for prey has nothing in its mouth. Plants that do not reach their roots towards the water wither. He who does not contribute to life does not deserve the nourishment of life." He stopped, his eyes gentle but clear. "You see that I am old and think that I have a right to rest. But being entitled is not the truth, because earning a living is an act that takes place every day. In every way, we can contribute to this world. The Buddha taught, be diligent in your own liberation. I don't eat when I don't do it, not to punish anyone, but to stay true to the laws of existence." That teaching made everyone silent. The students suddenly understood that, by trying to protect the master from labor, they were inadvertently depriving him of his joy and dignity. Zen Master Hayakujo has pointed out, work is a form of meditation, a way for people to connect themselves to the flow of life. When we stop giving, a part of our spirit also stops living. Don't do, don't eat. Not serving, not really being nurtured. It is not a teaching about labor, but about life. Tonight, if you reflect on the work you're doing, whether it's tending to a small garden, helping someone with a kind thing, or creating something beautiful, you might realize what Master Hayakujo has to say. Usefulness is dignity. And the most nutritious food is what we receive after giving with all our hearts. Now, let's move on to another story, one about the different levels of spiritual maturity and how each of us faces challenges that are the fire that forges awakening. This is the story of Gettin's 3 types of disciples and a profound lesson in the wisdom of accepting difficulties. In the second half of the Tokugawa period, when Japan began to open up after centuries of isolation, on a misty mountain, Zen Master Gettin taught in a small monastery. Many scholars, Martial artists and meditators come there not only to study the teachings, but to learn to listen to themselves. He is famous for his subtle observations of human nature and his ability to recognize different types of students on the spiritual path. When preaching, His Holiness often smiled gently and said to his students in a voice that was both solemn and full of humor, "There are three types of disciples who come to study Zen." He stopped, his eyes sparkling. The first type, those who truly understand Zen and can pass it on to others. They have turned experience into wisdom, wisdom into life. The second type are the people who maintain and take care of the temple. They may not have attained deep enlightenment, but through devotion and service, they keep the flame of Zen never extinguished. He stopped again. The air seemed to settle down. Then, with a thin smile, he continued, "And the third type are bags of rice and hangers hanging from pants." The whole hall laughed, but then everyone was silent. Because everyone was wondering, was I one of them? He said, "These are people who are only present in form, go through rituals, but don't really let the practice transform their minds. They consume the energy of the community, but rarely contribute enlightenment or sincere service." Among the disciples of the time, there was a prominent man named Gasan, who had studied with Taisui, a famous strict master. Taisui's method was so notorious that most of his students gave up. He believed that no enlightenment comes from comfort. Just as a blacksmith uses fire to forge metal, he uses difficulty and pressure to train the human mind. He delegates seemingly absurd tasks, criticizes even seemingly perfect efforts, and even, when necessary, uses harsh methods to break student complacency. Most left, thinking that he was too cruel. But Gasan stayed. He endured all trials, not out of fear, but because he understood that true growth was always hidden in suffering. When others complained, Gasan just smiled. A poor disciple seeks fame in the master. A fair disciple likes praise, avoids challenge. There is also a good disciple who grows up through strict discipline. He said, "Just as a tree needs the wind to grow, a student needs adversity to shine." And indeed, it was that endurance that made Gasan a man. While others left in search of more pleasant teachers, he chose to stay. Let Taisui's fire forge his heart into steel. Taisui once taught, "No one can save me but myself. No one can take my place." Gasan understands that. He did not seek comfort, but the truth. "I don't want to be patted, but I want to be awakened." The three types of Getan's disciples are the three ways in which people face the spiritual path. Some understand and give back the light. Some serve to maintain the light. And there are those who just stand in the light without letting it touch their hearts. And then, when life teaches us with trials, will we have the courage to do as Gasan did? To stay, to learn the lessons hidden in difficulty, instead of leaving to find comfort. Because, just as the wind helps a tree to straighten, it is adversity that helps our minds to be stable. Life is also such a teacher, not always gentle, but always wanting to become a stronger and more aware version. Tonight, as you quietly reflect on the relationships around you, especially those who are going through hardship or transformation, try to feel the wisdom in Gasan's behavior. Do you recognize the thin line between anxiety disguised as caring and the real presence, which comes from mindful compassion? Sometimes, the most loving thing we can do is not to dwell in the pain of others, but to refuse to participate in their unnecessary suffering, even though they expect us to share our worries and fears. True compassion requires courage, the courage to say what needs to be said, rather than what others want to hear. And then the next story will open up a profound truth about the difference between mental knowledge and realization by life experience, about how life often tests whether our spiritual knowledge can stand up to the friction of reality. This is the story of Yamoka Teshu and the bamboo tube that broke his entire philosophy. In the bustling capital, where young students traveled from temple to temple in search of the most famous teachers, Yamoka Teshu was known as a brilliant intellectual, one whose mind was as sharp as a sword. He was well versed in Buddhist philosophy, thoroughly analyzed metaphysical concepts, and was able to explain emptiness, or non-duality, in an eloquent manner that made the entire world of scholars admire. However, Teshu approached the spiritual path like a scholar to collect a degree. He went from teacher to teacher to be confirmed that I understood. One day, he approached Zen master Duan at Shikoku Temple, who was famous for being able to see through all the pretended layers of the mind. Teshu arrived, confident and excited. He wanted to show that he had understood the truth. Duan sat quietly in his simple room, overlooking the small garden, holding a bamboo pipe in his hand, slowly smoking like a person who had witnessed hundreds of false masters coming and going. When Teshu began his presentation, he read through the classic quotes. The mind, the Buddha, and sentient beings, they all don't exist after all. There is no enlightened person. There is no delusion. There is no giving. There is no receiving. There is only emptiness, where all distinctions disappear. His voice was full of confidence, and his eyes lit up with academic pride. Duan just smoked quietly, did not nod, did not shake, only a thin puff of smoke dissipated in the air. When Teshu finished his lecture, he waited for a compliment, a sign of acknowledgement. But the teacher remained silent. Then suddenly, without warning, Duan lifted the bamboo pipe in his hand and tapped Teshu the head. A dry noise rang out. Teshu was startled, his face flushed with anger. He clenched his fists and shouted, "How dare you hit me?" The whole spiritual calm disappeared, leaving only very real anger, hot, vivid, and undeniable. Duan put down the bamboo pipe, looked at the gentle Teshu, and asked softly like a breeze, "If nothing exists, then where does this anger come from?" That question fell into the space, penetrating deep like incense in a still night. The entire philosophical castle of Teshu collapsed in an instant. Just a few minutes ago, he preached that everything is virtual. However, the pain in the head and the anger in the heart are very real. Teshu realized that his mind could understand emptiness, but his body and emotions still lived in the full world of yes and nothing. It is the moment when truth touches reality. Meditation is not concerned with words, but with the life that is present. Duan's blow is not violence. It is a perfect lesson, a mirror that reflects the gap between knowledge and testimony. Because if just a bamboo tube can break our enlightenment, is that enlightenment real or not? In life, it is repeated. We can understand that anger is suffering, but still be angry when offended. We can know that everything is impermanent, but it still hurts to lose. Knowledge is not enough. It has to permeate the body and mind, becoming our breath, our reaction, and our choice. Duan pointed it out with a bamboo tube and with the silent compassion of a true teacher. Tonight, you might ask yourself, has there ever been a bamboo tube in your life? Moments that made us realize the gap between what we say and what we actually live? Sometimes these pains are enlightenment because they awaken us from dry knowledge, bringing us back to real, rough, and miraculous life. And so, our journey through the 18 meditation stories comes to an end. From the samurai and the door of heaven and earth, to the stingy artist, to Duan's bamboo pipe, it's all about one thing. The peace you seek has never been outside. It's always right here, in the breath, in awareness, in this very moment. May tonight you rest in the stillness of your mind, feeling that the journey of search is over, because you have never lost what you are looking for. Peace is not something to be achieved, but something to be remembered. May you return to your old home, where there is no temple, no journey, only a full and free presence smiling within yourself.